Captain Riley Riot Murphy had always prided herself on being unlucky at precisely the right moments. Today, however, as she found herself zip-tied and being dragged through the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Enforcement Coalition flagship Righteous Judgment, she was starting to question that philosophy. "Watch the merchandise, boys," she called out cheerfully to the two hulking Craxian guards flanking her. "I bruise easily, and let's face it, you're not exactly gentle giants, are you?" The guards, who looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a bad attitude and then given it military training, grunted in what she assumed was their version of professional acknowledgement. Their armor clinked with each step, sounding like a one-man band having a seizure. "Oh, a nice ship, by the way," Riley continued, craning her neck to admire the pristine white walls adorned with what looked like the galaxy's most pretentious art collection. "Very clean. Very sterile. Very we compensate for our lack of personality with excessive hygiene. I dig it." The corridor stretched endlessly before them, lined with holographic displays showing coalition propaganda. Smiling alien faces of various species proclaimed unity, justice, and the inevitable triumph of order over chaos. Riley snorted. "You know, back on Earth, we had a saying about people who needed this much validation. We called them politicians." They passed a group of junior officers who stopped their conversation to stare. Riley gave them a little wave with her bound hands. "Don't mind me, folks. Just your daily reminder that humans exist and apparently make questionable life choices." One of the officers, a tall blue-skinned Veltarian with enough medals to open a recycling center, stepped forward. "Prisoner, you will maintain silence." "Oh, will I though?" Riley tilted her head with mock curiosity. "Because I've been talking this whole time, and somehow the universe hasn't imploded. Unless this is actually hell, in which case decent Wi-Fi for the afterlife." The officer's face shifted through several shades of blue before settling on what Riley could only describe as frustrated periwinkle. "Your species' tendency toward inappropriate humor in dire situations is well documented," the officer said stiffly. "It is considered a primitive defense mechanism." "Primitive." Riley laughed. "Oh, honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is just my warm-up routine. Wait until I start doing crowd work." They turned a corner into what was clearly the more important section of the ship. The walls here were embedded with some kind of crystalline technology that pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with the barely contained energy of advanced systems. "Ooh, fancy," Riley observed. "Let me guess, these crystals do something incredibly important and complex that primitive human minds couldn't possibly comprehend." "The bio-neural interface crystals regulate our ship's consciousness matrix," one of the guards spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel in a blender. "They process millions of calculations per nanosecond." "Millions per nanosecond? That's adorable." Riley grinned. "My smartphone back home could probably do that while running 3 dating apps and streaming cat videos." The guard's grip on her arm tightened. "Impossible. Human technology is centuries behind coalition standards." Sure. "That's definitely what we want you to think." She winked at a security camera as they passed. "Hey there, big brother. Hope you're getting my good side." They stopped before a massive door that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought subtlety was a type of seasoning. The surface was covered in intricate patterns that definitely meant important people do important things here. And it was flanked by 2 more guards who looked like they bench-pressed small moons for fun. "Ah, the interrogation room, I presume." Riley looked up at the intimidating portal. "Let me guess, it's soundproof, escape-proof, and designed to break the will of even the strongest beings in the galaxy." "Precisely," the blue officer said with satisfaction. "Cool. Can't wait to redecorate it." The door began to iris open with a theatrical hiss that probably cost extra. Beyond lay a circular chamber bathed in harsh white light, with a single chair in the center surrounded by an array of technological instruments that screamed we're about to ruin your day. As they guided her toward the chair, Riley took in every detail with the practiced eye of someone who'd been in more interrogation rooms than she cared to count. The neural probe array hanging from the ceiling like a metallic spider. The emotional resonance field generators built into the walls. The classic intimidation lighting that made everyone look like they were auditioning for a low-budget horror film. "You know," she said as they strapped her into the chair, You guys really went all out with the whole evil overlord aesthetic. Did you hire the same decorator who did the Death Star? The guards finished securing her restraints and stepped back. The blue officer activated a control panel, and the room's lighting shifted to an even more ominous setting. Your interrogation will begin shortly, human. I suggest you prepare yourself mentally for what is to come. Riley settled back in her chair as comfortably as the restraints would allow. Oh, I'm prepared all right. Question is, are you? The door hissed open again, and 3 figures entered with the kind of dramatic timing that suggested they'd been practicing their entrance. Riley had to admire the choreography, even if the execution was a bit much. The first figure was clearly the muscle of the operation. Commander Vexthal stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scaled green skin that caught the harsh lighting like armor plating. His forearms moved with predatory grace, each ending in claws that could probably open cans or disembowel enemies with equal efficiency. His head was elongated and reptilian, with yellow eyes that fixed on Riley with the intensity of someone who'd read too many interrogation manuals. "Greetings, human," Vexthal said, his voice a low rumble that probably sounded intimidating in the bathroom mirror. "I am Commander Vexthal of the Coalition Security Division. I will be overseeing your conversation." "Nice to meet you, Vex. Can I call you Vex? Love what you've done with the whole dinosaur who went to law school look. Very intimidating. I'm assuming those extra arms aren't just for show." Vexthal's eyes narrowed. "These appendages have extracted information from beings far more resilient than your fragile species." "Ooh, fragile. That's cute." Riley grinned. "You know, back home we have creatures called honey badgers, tiny little things. But they'll fight anything, even things that could eat them for breakfast. Humans are basically space honey badgers, but with better dental care." The second figure stepped forward with mechanical precision. Chief Analyst Quindar was insectoid, resembling a praying mantis that had been stretched to human height and given a complex about organization. His compound eyes reflected the room's lighting in thousands of tiny fragments, and his movements were quick and angular. Statistical analysis of human psychological profiles indicates a 97.3% probability of information extraction within the first hour. Quindar announced in a voice that sounded like a computer having an argument with a calculator. "Factoring in your species' documented tendency towards self-preservation, I calculate optimal cooperation levels will be achieved through Standard Protocol 7 Alpha." Riley blinked slowly. "Did you just math at me? That's honestly adorable. Do you have a little spreadsheet for everything? Please tell me you color-code your reports. All reports are organized according to Coalition standard filing procedures." Quindar replied seriously. "Color coding is implemented based on threat assessment levels." "Of course it is." Riley shook her head in amazement. "Buddy, you're going to have so much fun with me. I don't even fit into human filing systems, let alone alien ones." The third figure didn't so much enter as flow into the room. Dr. Morpheus Glitch was a shapeshifter, currently maintaining a roughly humanoid form that looked like someone had asked a committee to design a person and then given up halfway through. His features were constantly shifting in subtle ways, as if he couldn't quite decide what he wanted to look like. "Fascinating," Morpheus said, his voice carrying the kind of smugness that usually came with advanced degrees and poor social skills. "The subject displays classic deflection behaviors combined with inappropriate humor responses. Textbook primitive psychological defense mechanisms." "Oh, great. The blob thinks he's Freud," Riley muttered. "Let me guess you're going to psychoanalyze me until I break down in tears and confess all my deepest secrets." "Precisely." Morpheus's form solidified slightly, taking on what he probably thought was an authoritative appearance. "I have studied thousands of species' psychological frameworks. The human mind is particularly simple to decode." Riley laughed. "Simple? Oh, honey, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Human psychology is like a bag of cats that's been set on fire and then shot into space. Good luck mapping that." Vexthal moved to stand directly in front of her chair, all 4 arms crossed in what was clearly his signature intimidation pose. "Your humor will not protect you here, human. We have methods that have broken beings far stronger than you. Stronger, maybe, but probably not more annoying." Riley looked around at her 3 captors with genuine amusement. Seriously, though, Is this the best team they could put together? The angry lizard, the spreadsheet bug, and the identity crisis blob? What's next? A robot with daddy issues. Quindar's antennae twitched. Our success rate in extracting information is 94.7% across all known species. Across all known species except humans. I'm betting, Riley said. When was the last time any of you actually interrogated one of us? The three aliens exchanged glances. Morpheus shifted uncomfortably, his form becoming slightly more liquid. Human encounters with coalition forces are relatively infrequent, he admitted. Relatively infrequent as in never, right? Riley's grin widened. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. You're about to get a crash course in Human Psychology 101. And let me tell you, the textbooks don't cover this stuff. Vex Thul activated a control panel, and various devices around the room began to hum with power. We shall see, human. We shall see. Yes, we shall. Riley agreed cheerfully. By the way, which one of you is going to cry first? I'm taking bets. Let us begin with something simple, Vex Thul announced, activating the neural probe array. The metallic spider descended from the ceiling with mechanical precision, its various sensors and probes extending toward Riley's head like the world's worst hairdryer. Riley watched it approach with the casual interest of someone observing a mildly entertaining street performer. Oh, the brain tickler. Classic choice. Let me guess, this is supposed to read my thoughts and extract my deepest secrets. The neural interface will map your cognitive patterns and identify deception markers, Quindar explained, consulting his tablet. Resistance is statistically impossible once full synchronization is achieved. The probe made contact with Riley's temples, and immediately the room filled with a high-pitched whining sound that suggested expensive equipment having a nervous breakdown. That's weird, Morpheus observed, his form shifting anxiously. The readouts are completely scrambled. Riley yawned. Yeah, you might want to recalibrate that thing. Human brains don't really play nice with standardized alien tech. We're kind of the Windows Vista of biological consciousness. Vex Thul increased the power setting, and the whining grew louder. Sparks began shooting from several of the probe's sensors. Impossible, he growled. This technology works on every known sapient species, keyword being known. Riley pointed out helpfully. You might want to add a footnote to your manual about that. The neural probe finally gave up with what sounded suspiciously like an electronic sigh and retracted to the ceiling, several of its components now smoking gently. Phase 2, Morpheus announced, stepping forward with renewed confidence. Psychological pressure combined with environmental manipulation. The room's lighting shifted to a pulsing red pattern designed to induce anxiety, while speakers hidden in the walls began emitting subsonic frequencies meant to trigger primal fear responses. The temperature dropped several degrees, and the air itself seemed to thicken with an oppressive weight. Riley looked around appreciatively. Ooh, mood lighting. This is actually kind of relaxing. Reminds me of this club I used to go to back on Mars. Terrible music, but great atmosphere. The fear induction protocols should be triggering severe psychological distress, Quindar said, consulting his readouts with growing confusion. Instead, your stress hormones are actually decreasing. Yeah, I've got weird brain chemistry, Riley explained. What you guys call psychological torture, we call Tuesday night. You should try living through human rush hour traffic sometime. This is nothing. Morpheus moved closer, his form shifting into what he clearly thought was a more threatening configuration. Perhaps a more direct approach. Tell me about your childhood, human. What fears haunt your dreams? Riley considered this seriously. Well, there was this clown at my 6th birthday party who was clearly drunk and kept making balloon animals that looked like existential crises. That was pretty traumatic. Oh, and one time I ran out of coffee during finals week. That was rough. Your deflection mechanisms are quite sophisticated, Morpheus admitted grudgingly. But everyone has breaking points. Tell me about your family, your loved ones. My mum makes the best lasagna in 3-star systems. My dad thinks he's funnier than he actually is, and my sister collects vintage horror movies. They're all disappointingly well adjusted, which is probably why I turned out like this. Vex Thul slammed one of his fists on the control panel. Enough games. The truth serum will bypass your psychological defenses. A mechanical arm extended from the wall, brandishing a syringe filled with glowing blue liquid. Riley watched it approach with mild interest. Truth serum. Really? What is this, the 1950s? Next you'll be pulling out the rubber hose and the telephone book. The injection was swift and professional. Riley waited a moment, then shrugged. Well, feel free to start asking your important questions any time now. The serum requires several minutes to take full effect, Quindar informed his colleagues, at which point she will be compelled to answer all questions truthfully. Great. While we're waiting, can I ask you guys some questions? I'm genuinely curious about your whole setup here, Morpheus preened slightly. I suppose there's no harm in satisfying your primitive curiosity. Awesome. So Vex, those forearms of yours, is that a genetic thing or did you get them surgically installed? Because honestly, the asymmetry is kind of bugging me. Have you considered going with 6? It would be more aesthetically pleasing. Vex Thul's scales bristled. These limbs are a mark of evolutionary superiority among my people. Sure, but functionally speaking, what do you actually use them for? I mean, besides the obvious intimidation factor, do you play instruments? Type really fast? Give amazing hugs? Aye, they are weapons. Vexthul said stiffly. Right, but like in your spare time? Because honestly, if I had 4 arms, I'd probably use them to eat pizza while playing video games and filing my taxes simultaneously. Efficiency through redundancy. Quindar cleared his throat mechanically. The truth serum should be fully active now. Perfect, Riley said brightly. Fire away with those probing questions. What is your real name? Vexthul demanded. Captain Riley Murphy, though my friends call me Riot because I have a tendency to accidentally start small revolutions wherever I go. The 3 interrogators exchanged confused looks. That had been surprisingly straightforward. What is your mission? Morpheus pressed. Originally? Smuggling medical supplies to colonies that your coalition has been blockading. Currently? Figuring out whether you 3 are actually as incompetent as you seem, or if this is some kind of elaborate performance art. Vexthul leaned forward menacingly. What do you know about human military capabilities? Riley grinned. Now that's a much more interesting question. The answer is, way more than you do. What did you mean by that? Morpheus demanded, his form shifting nervously between configurations as if he couldn't decide whether to look threatening or concerned. Riley settled back in her chair with the satisfied air of someone who'd just played a particularly good card. Oh, you know, just the usual stuff. Like how Vex here has been having trouble sleeping lately because he's worried about his performance reviews. Vexthul's 4 arms tensed simultaneously. How could you possibly know that? Lucky guess. Riley's grin widened. Or maybe it's the way you keep checking that communication device on your belt every 30 seconds. The classic anxiety behavior. Your superior officer is Admiral Krektor, right? And he's been breathing down your neck about your department's declining efficiency ratings? The temperature in the room seemed to drop another few degrees, but this time it wasn't from any environmental controls. That information is classified, Vexthul growled, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. Is it though? Riley turned her attention to Quindar. And you, my mathematically minded friend, have been running the same statistical analysis 17 times because you can't figure out why the probability matrices keep coming up with impossible results. The answer, by the way, is that your base assumptions are wrong. Quindar's compound eyes seemed to focus on her with uncomfortable intensity. My calculations are based on verified coalition intelligence databases, which are apparently about as accurate as a weather forecast on a planet with no atmosphere. Riley looked thoughtful. Tell me, when was the last time your databases were updated with actual human intelligence? Not speculation, not third-hand reports from traders, but real, verified data. The silence that followed was telling. Let me help you out with some math, Quinn. The Coalition has been in contact with human space for, what, about 15 years now? In that time, how many actual humans have you captured and interrogated? Statistical records indicate, Quindar began, then stopped. His antennae twitched frantically as he accessed his databases. Records indicate 0 confirmed captures prior to this incident. 0, Riley repeated with satisfaction. And in those 15 years, How many human ships have been destroyed or captured by coalition forces? Another pause. More frantic database searching. 0 confirmed incidents. Quindar admitted quietly. Interesting pattern, don't you think? Riley looked between her 3 captors. 15 years of contact, and somehow every single encounter has ended with humans just slipping away. Almost like we're better at this game than you realized. Morpheus shifted closer, his form taking on a more aggressive configuration. You're suggesting some kind of conspiracy. Human technology is primitive. Your ships are decades behind coalition standards. Are they, though? Riley asked pleasantly. I mean, you caught me, right? So obviously I must have been using inferior technology. Except, Morpheus, have you actually examined my ship yet? The shapeshifter's form flickered with uncertainty. The vessel is being analyzed by our technical division. Oh, I bet that's going well. Riley chuckled. Let me save them some time. The power core is running on principles your physicists think are impossible. The navigation system is using algorithms that shouldn't work according to your understanding of space-time. And the hull material? Yeah, that's not in any of your databases. Vex Thul activated his communication device. This is Commander Vex Thul. I need an immediate report on the analysis of the captured human vessel. The response came back within moments, and even filtered through alien communication technology, the confusion in the technician's voice was unmistakable. Sir, we're having difficulty with the analysis. The technology appears to be, well, sir, it appears to be more advanced than our standard equipment can properly evaluate. Riley nodded approvingly. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Impossible, Morpheus insisted. But his conviction was wavering. Human civilization is barely spacefaring. You've only had faster-than-light travel for how long? Riley interrupted. According to your records. Because I'm really curious about what your intelligence services have been telling you. Quindar was frantically accessing databases again. Records indicate humans achieved FTL capability approximately 57 years ago. Riley burst into laughter. 57 years? Oh, that's precious. That's absolutely precious. She wiped an imaginary tear from her eye. Guys, we've been tooling around the galaxy for over 2 centuries. The fact that you think we just figured out how to break the speed of light 57 years ago is, well, it's exactly the kind of thing we'd want you to think. The 3 aliens stared at her in growing horror. But that would mean, Morpheus began. That would mean that every piece of intelligence you have about humanity is wrong, Riley finished helpfully. That every assumption you've made about our capabilities, our technology, our intentions, is based on deliberate misinformation. That for the past 15 years you've been interacting with what you thought was a primitive species, when in reality, she paused for dramatic effect. In reality, you've been playing checkers while we've been playing 4-dimensional chess. Vex Thul's claws extended reflexively. You're lying. This is another deflection technique. Am I, though? Riley tilted her head. Because here's the thing about truth serum. Vex. It works both ways. I can't lie to you, but I also can't stop myself from telling you things you probably don't want to hear. The room fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the increasingly rapid breathing of 3 very worried aliens. So, Riley continued cheerfully, who wants to hear about what humans have really been up to while you thought we were just fumbling around in primitive starships? Riley looked around at her 3 captors with the satisfied expression of someone about to deliver the punchline to a very long, very elaborate joke. The thing is, she began conversationally, you guys never asked the right questions. You assumed I was just a smuggler because that's what my identification said. You assumed my ship was primitive because that's what your sensors told you. You assumed humans were backwards because that's what we wanted you to assume. Morpheus had abandoned all pretense of maintaining a stable form and was now shifting nervously between shapes like a blob of uncertainty. You're claiming to be some kind of spy? Nah. Sis. Yeah, not just any spy, Riley said with genuine pride. Deep cover intelligence operative, Terran Strategic Command. 15 years of training, 12 different cover identities, and a mission timeline that's been running since before any of you were hatched, spawned, or whatever it is your species do. Vex Thul's communication device buzzed insistently. He answered it with one hand while keeping his other 3 trained on Riley. Commander, We're receiving reports from across the sector. Human vessels they're everywhere. Ships we've never seen before, using technology we can't identify. They're not attacking, but they're making it very clear that they've been there all along, Riley finished. Surprise. The primitive humans have been watching you this whole time. Quindar was accessing his databases with increasingly frantic movements. This doesn't compute. Our intelligence indicates human space extends to maybe 12 systems at most. 12 systems that you know about, Riley corrected. Try 1200. We've been expanding quietly for 2 centuries while maintaining the illusion that we're still confined to our little corner of the galaxy. Stealth technology, cloaked colonies, false flag trading operations. We've been everywhere, learning everything about everyone. But why? Morpheus demanded, his fawn finally settling into something resembling panic. What's the point of such an elaborate deception? Riley's expression grew more serious. Because the galaxy is a dangerous place, and we learned early that the best way to survive is to be underestimated. While everyone was dismissing humans as primitive newcomers, we were studying galactic civilization, learning its weaknesses, and positioning ourselves to survive whatever came next. She gestured around the interrogation room with her bound hands. Take this whole setup, for example. Your coalition has been using these exact techniques for centuries, right? Same psychological pressure, same technological intimidation, same basic approach. The methods are time-tested and effective, Vexthal said stiffly. Against species who evolved in this galaxy, sure. But humans? We've been torturing each other for fun for thousands of years. They invented reality television. We create stress for entertainment. Your advanced psychological techniques are basically a Tuesday for us. The communication device buzzed again. This time, all 3 aliens leaned in to listen. Sir, we're getting reports from Coalition headquarters. They're finding human operatives embedded in their organization, deep cover agents who have been working there for years. The scope of the infiltration is extensive. Riley nodded approvingly. Oh good, they found the obvious ones. Those are just the decoys, by the way. The real operatives are much better hidden. How many? Quindar's voice was barely a whisper. How many what? Human operatives in Coalition space. Human colonies you don't know about. Human ships currently observing this conversation. Riley shrugged. The honest answer is, we stopped counting years ago. Morpheus had given up on maintaining any kind of coherent shape and was now just a blob of existential dread. This is impossible. Our security protocols were designed by people who thought humans were primitive, Riley interrupted. Did you know that 3 of the beings who wrote your current security manual were actually human operatives? We've been helping you design systems that we knew how to circumvent. The room was silent except for the sound of 3 alien minds being blown simultaneously. My capture today wasn't an accident, Riley continued. I've been trying to get captured for 6 months. We needed to understand your new interrogation protocols, your updated security measures, your current threat assessment procedures. And honestly, we needed to know if you'd figured out what we were really up to. And have we? Vexthal asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Not even close, Riley said cheerfully, which brings me to the real reason I'm here. See, my government has been debating for years about whether to reveal ourselves or continue the masquerade. Today's little test has helped us reach a decision. She looked directly at the ceiling-mounted camera she'd waved at earlier. Hello, Admiral Chen. I know you're watching. You can initiate Phase 7 now. The communication devices of all 3 aliens began buzzing frantically. Reports were flooding in from across Coalition space. Human ships decloaking around major stations. Human operatives revealing themselves in government positions. Human colonies lighting up on sensors across hundreds of systems. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted blob creatures, Riley announced with theatrical grandeur, I'd like to formally introduce you to humanity as we actually are. Not the primitive newcomers you thought you knew, but a major galactic power that's been hiding in plain sight for longer than most of your civilizations have had space travel. She paused for effect. Also, we've been running about 40% of your infrastructure for the past decade, so you might want to be nice to us. Just saying. Riley stretched in her chair as comfortably as the restraints would allow, watching her three captors process the complete collapse of their worldview. It was like watching someone try to solve a puzzle after discovering that half the pieces belonged to a completely different box. "You know," she said conversationally, "I have to admit, this has been more fun than I expected. Usually when I reveal the big secret, people are either angry or terrified. You guys just look confused." "The restraints," Vexthal said suddenly, his tactical mind apparently catching up to the situation. "You're still secured, even if everything you're saying is true." Riley looked down at her hands, then back up at him with an expression of mild amusement. "About that?" "Yeah." The restraints fell away from her wrists and ankles with soft clicks, landing on the floor in neat piles. She stood up, stretched her arms over her head, and worked out a crick in her neck. Much better. "Those things were getting uncomfortable. Impossible," Quindar stammered. "Those restraints are magnetically sealed. They require a specific frequency modulation to release." "Yeah, about that." Riley pulled a small device from what had appeared to be a simple belt buckle. "Took me about 3 minutes to map your security frequency after you strapped me in. Human technology, remember? We're good at this stuff." Morpheus had finally managed to settle on a fawn that looked roughly like a deflated balloon. "You've been free this entire time, free as a bird." "Well, a bird that was voluntarily sitting in a chair having an entertaining conversation with 3 very confused aliens." Riley pocketed the device and began walking around the room, examining the various pieces of interrogation equipment with professional interest. The neural probe was a nice touch, by the way, very intimidating. Completely useless against human brain patterns, but you couldn't have known that. She tapped one of the sensors with her finger. "We actually use similar technology for entertainment purposes. Brain-computer interfaces for immersive gaming. Kid stuff, really." Vexthal was reaching for his sidearm when Riley turned toward him with a patient expression. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Vex. First, because your weapon won't work in here anymore. I may have accidentally disrupted your power grid while I was freeing myself from the restraints. Second, because shooting me would be incredibly bad for your career prospects." "Why?" he growled, though his hand hesitated on his weapon. "Because this entire conversation has been broadcast live to both Coalition Command and Terran Strategic Command. You're currently being watched by some very important people who are very interested in how this situation resolves." She gestured to the walls around them. "Remember all those bio-neural interface crystals in the corridors? Turns out they're excellent for piggybacking communication signals. I've been streaming everything since the moment you brought me aboard." The 3 aliens looked around the room with new horror, suddenly aware that their professional incompetence had been witnessed by their superiors. "Don't worry, though," Riley continued reassuringly. "The reviews have been mostly positive. Admiral Chen particularly enjoyed the part where you explained your filing system, Quinn. She said it reminded her of her nephew's science fair project." A new sound filled the room, the low harmonic resonance of a ship powering up its engines nearby. Riley checked what looked like a simple wristwatch but was clearly something much more sophisticated. "Right on time." "That would be my ride. Your ship is in our cargo bay." Vexthal protested weakly, "under maximum security." "That ship." "Oh no, that's not my ship. That's a decoy I've been flying around for months. My actual ship has been following your vessel since you captured me, waiting for the right moment to make an entrance." The harmonic resonance grew stronger, and the lights in the room began to flicker. "See, the thing about human technology," Riley explained as she walked toward the door, "is that we've had a couple of centuries to figure out how to make it work really well. Stealth systems, matter transmitters, localized reality manipulation, all the good stuff." The door to the interrogation room opened, though none of the aliens had touched the controls. Riley paused in the doorway and turned back to her former captors. "This has been genuinely educational for all of us. You've learned that everything you thought you knew about humanity was wrong. I've learned that coalition interrogation techniques haven't improved in about 3 centuries, and everyone watching has learned that first contact situations are way more complicated than anyone expects." She pulled out her communication device. "Admiral Chen, this is Operative Murphy. Mission parameters have been exceeded. We have complete psychological profiles on Coalition Command structure, comprehensive intelligence on their security protocols, and enough comedy material to keep the intelligence briefings entertaining for years. A woman's voice responded through the device, tinged with amusement. "Well done, Riley. Are you ready for extraction?" "And more than ready." These restraints were really uncomfortable, and the conversation was getting repetitive. As she stepped through the doorway, Riley turned back one final time. "Oh, and guys, you might want to update your databases. The whole primitive humans thing is getting old. We're more of a scary, competent humans who have been pretending to be primitive while secretly running half your civilization situation now." She walked away down the corridor, her voice echoing back as she went. "Also, Vex, you should really talk to someone about that performance anxiety. It's affecting your work quality. And Morpheus, the shape-shifting thing is cool, but maybe pick a form and stick with it for more than 5 minutes. People find consistency reassuring." The sound of matter transportation filled the air, and Riley Murphy, career smuggler, deep cover operative, and accidental diplomat, disappeared in a shower of sparkling lights. The three aliens stood in their interrogation room, surrounded by the smoking remains of their equipment and the shattered fragments of their assumptions about the universe. "So," Quindar said eventually, "should we file this under mission successful or catastrophic intelligence failure?" Morpheus, who had finally settled on a form that looked like a very tired jellyfish, sighed deeply. "Yes,